To kick us off today, I'm excited to introduce Balu Arumugam. Balu is Chief Security Architect for Mars, Inc. Within that role, he focuses on advancing the global security architecture of the enterprise with responsibilities spanning budget management, global transformation initiatives, and establishing a 21st century global security architecture. Please join me in welcoming Balu to the virtual stage.
Thanks, Patrika. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about quantum computing, quantum AI, and its impact on cybersecurity. Google in October 2019, they announced that they reached quantum supremacy. So what does that really mean? Google has built a working quantum computer using a 54-qubit quantum chip. Qubit is equivalent of bit in traditional computing. This 54-qubit quantum computer was able to perform a computation in 200 seconds that would take a traditional supercomputer, the most powerful supercomputer, to 10,000 years to actually perform that computation. So that it basically sort of it meant that quantum computer is able to surpass the performance of a traditional computer. So that basically what is defined as supremacy. What is quantum? So what is quantum mechanics, right? So it's I think we are going back to the particle science for the next big thing, I guess. So it's a particle that can exist in two different states at the same time. I think that's kind of in a traditional computing world, it's the state is either 1 or 0, but in the quantum world, it is 1 and 0 at the same time, right? So it's basically sort of a concept called superposition, and that basically sort of helps the performance aspects of that's a differentiating factor for quantum mechanics, right? So a quantum computer, and entanglement is also another interesting phenomenon. It's two different particles can become, they become intrinsically related or entangled. The outcome, if we measure, even if they are apart, even over greater distances, the outcome is the same. So I think that, in a way, I think that actually sort of has a lot of benefit in the cybersecurity world, which we will cover a little bit later. So quantum mechanics and quantum computing. Quantum computing is basically sort of harnessing and exploiting the amazing benefits of quantum mechanics, right? So, and as you have seen, Google has already done the amazing thing, the hardware side, but they have also introduced open source QuantumAI algorithm framework for developers to actually sort of use that to go solve real world problems, right? So I think Volkswagen and Daimler and Airbus and the number of other companies are already started using quantum computer to solve real world problems. When is this going to become mainstream, right? So I think that's a question. When is this going to be available for all the companies, all the enterprises to use? So I think one sort of a prediction says by 2023, most of the companies that are looking at quantum computing will actually use quantum computing as a service. I think that's already available. That companies have companies have actually sort of already started, using QCAS right now. But I think that will pick up by 2023. Will be, we'll see most of the organizations using it. Quantum supremacy. I think we spoke about the race. So as you can see here, there are companies, there are countries across the world trying to sort of, trying to basically sort of accelerate the innovation in the quantum space. U.S. government has actually announced October last year that there's, I think, more than $1 billion in investing in the quantum space. China, I think, by far the largest in the last year. So I think they have about $10 billion allocated to the quantum research. All right, so I think let's talk about, that's all about, the evolution of quantum computing. I think that's going to become mainstream at some point. So how is this going to revolutionize AI, right? So I think the intrinsic nature of quantum computing and its the particles being in multiple state at the same time, I think that sort of that superposition concept is actually going to power the AI deep learning, right? So I think, for example, the picture that you see here is the way how the input is kind of broken to different layers, and that's being able to, by a deep neural networks learning, right? The way how it works is basically just kind of adjusting the strengths to, of connections to different neurons and across different layers. And this is sort of like a matrix, right? So in a classical computing world, right, this is going to take quite a bit time to actually sort of calculate and basically sort of come up with the output. But in case of quantum computing, it's because of the superposition concept, right? So it actually can perform all this at a much, much faster pace. So it's so quantum computing is actually not for all use cases, but at certain use cases, it is going to be exponentially faster than traditional computing. And this is actually going to help in addressing the challenges that we see with Moore's law. So we are already bumping against Moore's law. It's basically, Moore's law is how fast the number of transistors in a given chip is doubling. I think it used to double like every 18 months. Now I think it is more than 2 years. So I think the performance capacity, about the processing power of traditional computing is actually sort of slowing down. So I think that's where I guess the quantum computing is going to be able to pick up and solve some of these real world problems. So you could see 1,000 qubit quantum computer can actually help with with a lot of the machine learning sort of use cases to solve real world problems. So we have seen, what the evolution of quantum computing and how it can actually help AI solve some of the bigger problems in the industry. And I think when we come to cybersecurity and its impact on cybersecurity is twofold. One is sufficiently large quantum computer can actually run Shor's algorithm. Peter Shor introduced that algorithm in 1994. That basically sort of, if it can be run with a sufficient high-performing quantum computer, it can actually break encryption, and it can actually be used to extract private key. So this is one of the challenges with the evolution of quantum computing. And as you see, a lot of the corporations and countries sort of accelerating investment, this is going to become a challenge at some point. And the other impact of on the evolution of quantum computing is that it can be used to create a stronger cryptography, and which definitely requires a quantum internet, quantum computers to actually sort of encrypt and decrypt data, right? So I think so that is definitely one positive impact on cybersecurity, and it can actually sort of help protect some of the innovations like blockchain, or potentially sort of accelerate and help other innovative solutions in the industry. It's not only encryption, it is also authentication, as you can see. So I think it's basically the secret keys being extracted using a sufficiently large size quantum computer. So that I think is a challenge of its own. So a lot of the sensitive defense installations, if you think, I think there's an article that I read, a lot of the US defense installations have already moved on to post-quantum cryptography. And I think a lot of the critical infrastructure installations are also actually moving, or in the process of moving to a stronger cryptography. So I think this can potentially create challenges, and obviously encryption, right? So I think the challenge with this and on the encryption side is harvest and decrypt. So data that is valuable today and the data that is valuable even 10 years from now, if that can be harvested and stored and decrypted retrospectively, that is actually going to create challenges. So something like intellectual property data being decrypted even in the future is going to create challenges for countries, companies, the whole industry. And one important challenge there also, if you, in the investment that we see, there's a lot of investment in quantum computing, but then there's not much you don't see that level of investment in the development of quantum resistant cryptography. So the PQC is kind of evolving, but I think that still lacks that level of investment. Moving to a PQC in real time is like changing tires on a moving car. And we all know very well that if it's not done right, the right way, it can render data unusable. And yeah, I think we all know with SHA-1 being broken in 2005, and it took more than 10 years for SHA-2 adoption rate to go above 70%. So it's a challenge, and I think it needs to, the move to post quantum cryptography is something that needs to be planned in advance. A lot of the companies are already doing that, preparing for data apocalypse. So I think with respect to post-quantum cryptography as well, as I said, it is still evolving. There's no clear standard in the industry. NIST is scrambling, and I think they've actually collected a lot of, I think they've gotten a few rounds of proposals, and I think they're getting closer. I think it's going to take a couple more years for them to be able to standardize PQC. Ultimately, all this depends on how fast a quantum computer becomes mainstream. I think a quantum computer with relatively sufficient capacity to be able to run Shor's algorithm. At the same time, the speed of development and standardization of PQC. So I think we have seen with SHA-2, the amount of time it took for adoption. So the speed of implementation of PQC it also matters. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. We kind of seen that So with a lot of these investments skyrocketing across the globe, the reality, quantum computer becoming a reality is going to be much sooner than we thought. The first actor are an entity. They are able to break through in the quantum space. They will have a significant economical and political advantage, if you can think about. Potentially become the super, global quantum superpower. So leveraging and harnessing the power of quantum computing to attack the current challenges, and also sort of preparing to attack some of the future challenges, is how companies and the countries can actually use it to stay relevant now as well as in the future. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me on the platform. And thanks for having me here. Have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Balu. We really appreciate you sharing these thoughts with us.